What's up, everyone? This is Steve from Bloom Audio, and today we have the FoKus Mystique from Noble. The FoKus Pro, when we first got that in at Bloom, was the best sounding TWS IEM that we'd ever heard. But some users experienced technical issues with it, ranging from poor call quality to some problems getting consistent connections. So Noble went ahead and created the FoKus Mystique, which takes the same drivers, same basic design, and upgrades other internal components to provide a technically improved performance with the same sound. So we're here to answer two questions today. One, if you already have a FoKus Pro and you like it, should you upgrade to the FoKus Mystique? And two, if you're just in the market for a TWS earphone in general, is FoKus Mystique the right one for you? Let's take a closer look and find out. So we already did an unboxing as a YouTube short. So we just want to take a quick look at Noble FoKus Mystique and do a couple comparisons to some other similar TWS and look at it next to some IEMs. So the IEMs themselves are, again, they're very much styled like a typical, acrylic shelled wired IEM, rather than more of the plastic builds you see. So like, compared to AirPods Pro over here, it's, very different sort of idea. Even something like the Sennheiser Momentum, which we'll talk more about later, you can kind of see the difference here, where this is a little bit more of an earbud. This is kind of in between, I guess, versus the style here. If you look at it next to something like this, now I pulled the wires off here, obviously, but here's a Noble Jade. So this is very much more the style of one of Noble's wired IEMs here versus your more typical TWS design. So now you can also see it's very similar to the Noble FoKus Pro, which use a lot of the same design idea. So here's a FoKus Pro. See, the case is nearly identical. The IEMs in terms of the shape and design are very close. Pop the ear tip off of here. And you can see, the profile and all of that is very similar. It looks like they're essentially using, the same molds here. The only real difference I noticed physically was on the nozzle, the flange at the tip here is a little wider on Mystique than it was on FoKus. Internally, Mystique has better call quality. We did some testing here. It has better connectivity in general. I just found less disconnects and more reliable in immediately connecting between the two. And so, yeah, it's just a generally improved from a technical perspective while maintaining very similar characteristics in terms of the design and all of that. Now, before we talk about the sound, I almost hesitate to add this every time, but with any wireless headphone, it's important to talk about which Bluetooth connection you're using. Our current standard is aptX HD. It's not the best out there, but it's available on a ton of devices, from the headphones themselves to virtually every Android phone or DAP on the market right now. So we find that to be a pretty good standard to judge something by, so we can make an apples to apples comparison. Now, in terms of its tuning, and I've been trying to put my finger on this for a while, but FoKus Mystique reminds me a little bit of the Campfire Solaris. It's a similar overall vibe where you have a, emphasized bass, but not exaggerated, that kind of comes down into the mids, and where you do sort of have some mid bass and some low mid emphasis. You don't really get that bass bleed effect. You get a pretty clean transition from the bass to the mids. Now, one difference between Mystique and Solaris is Solaris then kind of punches up the vocals a little bit. And we've heard some other IEMs and headphones recently that do that. Mystique keeps it pretty flat and neutral through the mids, and you end up with a really natural overall timbre that way. But it also means the vocals are just kind of in the middle of the mix. You don't get those sort of forward holographic vocals that the Solaris provided. And then in the treble, again, it's a really well-crafted treble, and the extension of the treble and the resolution is honestly pretty exceptional for a TWS earphone. And that's really the big thing about FoKus Pro is how it stands out as a TWS. And the two big pieces of that are the bass and the treble. So with the bass, extension, impact, and texture seem to be like a pick 2 out of 3 in most cases with the TWS. FoKus Mystique manages to hit all 3 of those, where there's great bass extension, really solid impact, and bass instruments just feel really well detailed, tactile. There's just a great texture overall to the low end. So really nails that in the bass. And then in the treble, you get that extension and resolution, and probably the best resolution out there on a TWS IEM for Noble Mystique. For comparison, we brought in 2 different IEMs. We brought the Sennheiser Momentum 3 and the Noble FoKus Pro. Now, I kind of started with the Mystique and the Pro, and honestly, I'm having a really hard time telling the difference. I think if you got out, the graphs and the measurements and everything else, you had a proper rig for taking precise measurements on these, you might find some really subtle differences in the mids or bass. But to my ears, I couldn't blind A/B these. So these are really essentially Noble took the same tuning, same sound from FoKus Pro and put it in Mystique, but with those upgraded features, with the better call quality, less connectivity issues, upgraded internal aspects. And also they added an ambient mode to this, which FoKus Pro does not have, which is basically like the transparency that's on a lot of other devices, just without a pure ANC mode. It's either off or it's the ambient mode, which is like a transparency mode. Sennheiser Momentum 3 provides a much more interesting comparison though. In terms of the basic package, pretty similar, not like a major edge there, but when you get into the look and design, I really love what Noble has done with FoKus Mystique in terms of that, custom style IEM design with the acrylic shell that really matches with the rest of their line. While Momentum, it's available in 3 different colors, but the more plasticky look is, very kind of a mainstream consumer look. Don't really love it personally. Now, it is a little bit lighter, which some people may like, and it has a shorter nozzle, which again, that could be hit or miss. I find most people who are experienced with IEMs will probably prefer the longer nozzle in Mystique, because that's going to create a more secure fit, especially if you're using these moving around, walking on the go. I think you're less likely to have the Mystique fall out than you would be with the Momentum 3. Now, the sound comparison was interesting, as at first I thought FoKus Mystique just absolutely blew Momentum 3 out of the water. To me, Momentum 3, the treble felt veiled. The bass was not really emphasized, but just kind of textureless. And overall, it just wasn't particularly dynamic or engaging for me. Now, in doing due diligence, I swapped out the tips on Momentum 3 from the stock ones and noticed there's a little foam filter in there out of the box. So removing that filter, swapping out the tips, all of a sudden, it really opens up, the treble comes alive. I'm hearing more detail in general and just less of that veil. It does sound a little bit more exciting and dynamic. Still think FoKus Pro really outdoes it there. Momentum 3, again, taking that filter out did improve it. but the sound it's very safe. It doesn't do anything exceptionally well. It doesn't really do anything poorly. And again, with that extra bit of treble, that extra bit of air, it does improve on my initial impressions of the Momentum 3. But compared to FoKus Pro, outside of maybe some aspects of the mid-range where Momentum 3 has a little bit more presence, I think FoKus Pro just hands down sounds better than Momentum 3. So if you have FoKus Pro and are looking for an upgrade, or you tried out FoKus Pro and found there were a couple things holding you back from purchasing it or keeping it, FoKus Mystique is pretty straightforward. It's the same sound. It upgrades the Bluetooth connectivity, the call quality, and adds the ambient mode. So that might be enough to make you say, time for an upgrade, or wait it out and see what Noble comes up with next year. I'm sure it'll be great as well. If you're just looking for the best audio experience in a TWS IEM, FoKus Mystique is the best out there in terms of the overall sound. Obviously, some people have different preferences when it comes to tuning, but just the overall technical performance and overcoming some of the perceived shortcomings of other TWS earphones, FoKus Mystique really knocks it out of the park. So I think with these subtle improvements, it's really just giving you more reasons to say yes to what we think is the best TWS out there. Thanks for watching. You can check out FoKus Mystique and a lot of other great products at bloomaudio.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back soon with more hi-fi personal audio content.